Welcome to another episode of Get Real. I'm Tom Lemons. Joined here by Steve Champion again. That's Commissioner Steve Champion of Hernando County. One of the most outspoken, conservative, I would say, in my opinion, the most conservative elected official in Hernando County. So I want to start by letting our audience know exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Now, we've been joined by Steve once before, about 6 weeks ago. And he shared a few things. We talked about body cameras quite a bit that time. Talked about some of the issues going on in the county, but there's a few big developments going on in Hernando County right now, and I just want to kind of preface it with a little bit of information about that. So today we're going to talk about body cameras once again, which was a big issue before. It's been an issue in Hernando County for quite a while because so many counties in the state have decided to go ahead and implement a program. Hernando Sheriff Al Ninhais has just denied it. He's pushed it. He's pushed back on it. He says it's not affordable. He says he likes to, fall behind or walk in the footsteps of Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, and yet people say that's a kind of a different animal, right? So that's what we're going to talk about, body cameras, a little bit, because there's a big development in the county north of Hernando, and so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a conflict of interest that's been brewing in the Board of County Commissioners, and Steve, again, being the one outspoken one who found out some information. We kind of led into it a little bit in the last episode with Steve, but today we're going to dig in a little more because just last Tuesday we had some big developments that was, I'll tell you, man, it's going to shock a lot of people. So I'm going to go ahead and start by sending it over to Steve Champion. Thank you for joining us today, Steve.
No problem.
Again,
I said I would come back.
You sure did.
Yeah.
That's right. You're the only one so far has been like, hey, I'll come back and give you an update on county business. Why not?
Well, thanks, guys, for having me on again. I said I would come back if you ever had any questions about what's going on in Hernando County. And there has been some things happening, especially with the county of the north with the body cameras. I don't know that much about it, but of course, I'm sure you asked some questions. And then the commission meeting now is obviously open to the public. And anyone can view that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about kind of what happened on Tuesday.
And I knew you would. I knew you would. Yeah. I knew Steve. Steve's about the biggest open book in the county. I don't know why the others are so silent a lot of times. But anyways, we'll just save that for another time. We'll start with one issue that has been bothering people in Hernando County for years. And that is the body camera issue, Jay. That is the issue of Sheriff Al Ninhais just refusing to take grants. He refuses to apply for grants, which would pay for the entire thing. He constantly says, well, to have body cameras, we have to have storage. Or, that's one excuse. The other excuse is we don't want to have people being able to access domestic violence cases. Request those videos.
Didn't they just implement them in Citrus County now?
Well, they sure did.
What happened with that?
But there's still rules involved in all that stuff, too. I mean, it's just, we can get into that. But
Well, yeah.
I don't know all the details.
Well, that's exactly what I want Steve to kind of comment on. Is like, Steve, now the last time we talked, we didn't know that Citrus County was making that decision. Now we know that it was a campaign promise by the new sheriff. I think it's David Vincent.
I knew. I just didn't say anything.
Yeah, that's right. You might have hinted, but we didn't know for sure. So now we know. No, Pasco has them, and it's successful. Citrus now decided within 2 months of this new sheriff being elected that he's going to keep a promise and make sure that the county has protections for both the deputies and for the citizen. And that's what everybody's calling for in Hernando. We're not looking for one side. This isn't a political issue. This is a protection issue. This is a constitutional issue. This is something that everyone deserves protection from. So that's where I'm coming back to you, Steve, now that we've seen that Citrus County has made that move, and now a county to the south, county to the north. What do you think about what's happened?
Well, I applaud the sheriff in the north, and I made mention of it in the commission meeting as well, that not only did this new sheriff beat the incumbent, slayed the incumbent, like 60-something% to 30%, on campaign promises like body cameras and being fiscally responsible, because the previous sheriff wanted to spend. Does that sound familiar? Sounds pretty familiar in Hernando County. So, on Tuesday, I'm going to give some credit to another commissioner, one of the other commissioners there, Commissioner Amsler. There was an item that came up, and the sheriff was asking for $2 million to buy some adjacent property for future expansion. Of course, I've said this. I am not voting for any expansion of government, period, on any department until we get a full audit from the governor. The governor has offered to do this, to come through and audit our waste, fraud, and abuse. I don't think there's any fraud that I know of, but as far as the county goes, we could always be more productive. So I'm waiting for this audits before we go spending money. So how this is relevant to cameras? Well, Commissioner Amser brought up, he goes, his stance was, and I'm not going to take words out of his mouth, I'm sure you can look at the video and see, he goes, I'm not comfortable spending any money with the sheriff and expanding government until body cameras are implemented. So I applaud him for mentioning that. And of course, the sheriff had a lot to say about, how much money it would cost, etc. Commissioner Amser came back, and I thought it was pretty sharp.
Wait a minute, this just happened in the last meeting?
Happened on Tuesday.
I got to go back and watch that video. Go ahead.
Basically, what the sheriff said is that, it's going to cost about $1.6 million, which, that's controversial. I mean, I don't think it costs that much. But even if it did, Commissioner Amser goes, you're spending $2 million on a property now. Why don't you use that money to get it done? I mean, he actually said that. I'm like,
he actually said that to me.
You could just use this money instead of spending money on the land and go ahead and implement the cameras. And again, I would refer your audience back to the original podcast that you and I, us three, what we had before. Yeah. And I explained the reasons why, but I'm going to touch on it one more time. Mm-hmm. That I'm a conservative Republican, and I do not believe in giving your hard-earned money to the government to waste. And you're seeing that, what's going on in the federal government now. But this is something that I do want to spend the money on because in turn, it's going to save us money. And it's going to protect the people. And I mentioned this last time about if you stop my freedom, my movement, it has to be recorded. I have to be protected.
Because they're the only people who can do that.
As well as a deputy.
Right.
So all other surveillance, like the flock cameras, all that stuff, all unconstitutional. But there's a probable cause to stop a free person. It should be recorded.
This is why the people of Hernando County voted Steve back into office at 70%, something like that, because they know he don't give a crap what feelings he's hurting. He's helping the majority of his constituents. It's what they want. When his constituents say, I want body cameras, then he's for body cameras. They want ATVs right on the road, then he's for that. If they want lower taxes, he's for that. He's not like the others who just sit there and go, well, let's just do this, this, and that.
Well, one other thing, and something I don't necessarily agree with, but when medical marijuana was passed, mm-hmm. I mean, Representative Holcomb, he was a commissioner at the time, along with others on there, wanted to ban dispensaries. And I'm like, even if you don't agree with it, 70+% of the population voted for it.
That's right.
So you have to, it's an overwhelming supermajority that voted for it. So, and you know what, the commission did the right thing, and they didn't vote that down.
How much money has that been bringing in?
That goes to the state. I mean, there's, obviously a business that's local would spend money locally. That's something for someone else to answer. I don't really know the answer to that, but I'm sure. Any business is good business if you're bringing in, you're collecting taxes.
People are going to do it anyway. So.
I'm not going to get off on a tangent, but I'm going to tell you this. I think that the fact that Steve Champion is, it's going to say I'm blowing smoke up his. I'm not going to say the word, but the fact that he is the one person that seems like the only elected official on that board that says, "Hey, I heard this and I looked into it and it sounds fishy or I don't like it." Then it's not helping the people that voted me in the office, though they don't like it. You seem like the only person that seems like take a stand for the people in your district. I mean, do you feel that way? I don't want you to put any pressure on your other, your colleagues, but I'm just saying.
What I can tell you is that, about 9 years ago, or 10 years ago when I started running, for Hernando County Commission, I said what I was about. And about transparency. Mm-hmm. I'm a conservative. I don't apologize for it. Mm-hmm. I'm for what the majority of the people want, like you said. And I haven't wavered. And I've challenged them, as much as the other commissioners challenged me. I said, show me a vote that you disagree with or the people are against. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With the exception of a zoning here and there, you're going to have somebody, if you have two neighbors going at it about something and you pick one side, you're going to have somebody who doesn't like you or doesn't like your decision. But hopefully they respect the process and said, hey, I was sitting as a judge at that point. So you're going to have some of those people. And then, of course, liberals just don't like the but that's okay.
Well, it's a red county, and you have, majority are not blue. So,
I know a majority of the Republicans, overwhelming majority of the Republicans support me. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing until they say they don't like what I'm doing. If they say that, then that's when you course correct or you bow out of politics.
Can I ask you a question about that? Something, and this is social media, because you know how social media is, but every single time I post a story about it, whether if it's a positive story about you or if it's just a story about the BOCC in general, we always have these few people that come on. Get rid of all of them. And why? Why? The one person who's standing up for your rights, why do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Isn't that what you look at it?
Well, I mean, a lot of people don't know. I mean, I'm probably the second most known politician in Hernando County, probably. Maybe third, I don't know.
Probably
I mean,
first.
obviously the sheriff is probably the most well known because he puts his name on everything around the
Not much
county.
liked anymore, though.
But then you got, but I would say probably only 15, 20% even know who I am. I mean, they have no idea. You go in a restaurant, they don't know. I mean, people are, and I don't blame them. I mean, who wants to get all in? It's frustrating and I mean, it's exhausting.
Let me tell you this. Actually, this is kind of a great segue into another issue, which, and not the Hawkins issue, which we're going to get that in a little bit. That is just absolutely disturbing to me, and I think a lot of people too. But what I want to talk about, you just talked about the, why people should be concerned about their local government, not national, just their little town where they pay taxes. And one of the things is, last year during the election, they did not pass the 1 cent sales tax, right? They knew what was going on. They knew this was just going to be a massive millions of dollars going into the pocket of some constitutional official. I'm not going to say the name yet. But anyways, this was something that they didn't want. They didn't want that money going there. So, Steve, the 1% sales tax, which was, poised to, that I think a lot of people wanted. I'm not saying it was bad. I know you were actually for it.
I supported it.
I have no
I
problem
still support
with it
flat
either.
tax.
I have no problem with the flat tax, even federally. But I'm just saying, But even for the county, go ahead.
Is that going towards education?
All right, so let me tell you, we're getting into that. So Jay, no, don't. I'm getting to that. I'm getting to it. 1% was going to go to the
Well,
capital,
all the sales tax can only be used for capital. Yeah.
capital improvements.
Well,
Capital improvements, right?
It was roads and first responders, sheriff's office, fire department.
Yes. But one of those constitutional officers, Sheriff Alneen Heiss of the Hernando County Sheriff's Office, wanted $300 to $350 million to rebuild and create an entire new sheriff's office, tear everything down, rebuild it, parking garages, new jail, new facilities, storage units, everything he ever wanted. He wanted to have built. And I'm sorry. That is what I think made it fail passage.
That was like leave a legacy and name it after
That's
yourself.
exactly what I was thinking. It was a legacy thing for him, and I'm sorry, but it didn't work. But now here's the caveat. Now, last Tuesday, which I did not even watch that part of the meeting, and I wish I had. I'm going to go back and watch it now. Apparently, Steve, and you can fill us in more on the details. $2 million was approved for a piece of land. So what they're going to do is piecemeal this so that sheriff gets what he wants in chunk by chunk by chunk, right out of the taxpayers' dollars, right out of the general fund. And is that not how they're going to do this, Steve?
I'll explain to you. So just to start with, just to preference all of this, there was about $5 million worth of capital spending that was on this meeting. $2 million was the sheriff asking for this land that's adjacent to his property. Not to say that it's not a good buy per se to have land that's next to your existing facility. You're probably going to be a lot more productive as far as adding and expanding in the future. I get all that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I made mention, if you go back and watch the video, about how the mandate was not to spend this money. And then, of course, I made the comment earlier about how I am not for expanding any government at all until we know for sure we need it, because we need to go through and do this DOE's audit and get with the governor, because the governor has offered to do any audit for any county, and we volunteered to do it. At least I think we did consensually.
Wait a minute, the governor has said he will.
The governor is on video.
Assist in audits?
Yeah, they're sending auditors from the state if you volunteer. Bay County was the first one to bring it up,
That's news to me.
and on Tuesday I actually brought it up, and they said Commissioner Campbell was going to bring it up. I missed the very end, but I heard they talked about it. So I think we have a general consensus that we welcome that, because like I said, I don't think there's any fraud in our county per se, like flat out fraud. I hope not. I'm going to say I don't know that for a fact.
I'll say there might be, but I don't know for sure either.
But I'm going to
Go
say
ahead,
I'm only going to speak facts when I talk about that.
You cannot speculate. You cannot.
Could we be more productive?
Yeah.
Could we spend less? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what you need. You almost need somebody to come in and say, do you really need to do it? Just because you want to do it, or just because you want to spend the money on it, should you? Like, for example, one of the $700,000 expenditures that they approved 3-2, Ryan Amster and myself pretty much have voted against everything that was capital improvement, but they voted a 3-2 land buy-in for waterways. Well, waterways is a department that's not even constitutionally required. We don't have to have it, right? So, and I understand.
Is that a state?
No, it's a county department.
It is a county.
Yes,
Okay.
and you know we've already got water. We've already got FWC. We've got state agencies that can, to control the water.
What's
So
the
we
ways that's just
Yeah, the canals,
well, basically they're
rivers.
involved in like plant. I mean, in the animals and you know help with dredging projects and things like that. Just mapping out the canals. There's a lot of
Everyone's taxed.
low level stuff, but it's taxes. It's still taxes.
Gotcha.
The whole point I'm making, and I don't want to get into all the weeds. on
Into the
that.
weeds,
It's
right.
really about like, should we spend the money? Do we want to? Maybe. Should we, considering where everybody's at in their pocket, right? And if you were to ask the citizens, say, hey, yes, we want fire, we want police, we want ambulances coming, right? We want basic services, we want roads that we can travel on, right? But do we need a waterways department? Do we need expansion of departments? And if you were to ask the people, I said this in a meeting, it would be overwhelmingly no. And I've made this mention a bunch of times, and I actually brought up a couple of points in the last meeting. But I believe if it's such a great idea to spend tax money or to increase taxes or to increase regulation, etc., it should be a unanimous vote. Mm-hmm. I mean, whether we'll ever get there, probably not. You may not get anything done in government if you had unanimous, because if you had one blocker, you would get nothing done. I get it.
Yeah.
But at least a supermajority to and there are some items that require supermajority where you need 4 out of 5, but it's rare. We had that with impact fees before, you know, where you need a 4 out of 5 because they went such a substantial increase that it needed a super majority. But anyway, so when it comes to that, and I'm going to get I get in the weeds, I get talking too much, but if it's such a good idea to spend the taxpayers' money, we should all agree. And when you got 3 out of 5 commissioners with a trajectory that they're going in, they're the majority. So you know, it doesn't really matter what Steve Champion wants if I'm the one no vote or one of the 2 no.
This episode of Get Real is brought to you by Tri-Peak Roofing, your Hernando County roofer. Now I want to get back to an issue we started talking about earlier, which was the body camera issue. Now, I just don't get it. I really just don't get it, Steve. Why? For the last 11 years, however long he's been sheriff, he has constantly come up with excuses as to why he does not want, and none of them they just don't make sense. And not to the public, why he does not want body cameras. Can you tell us why, Steve?
Well, I think when it comes to all of the policies that we bring forward, or maybe we disagree on, that it's his way or no way, and you know, and that's my opinion, and as well as some of the deputies that I know that want to remain anonymous that talk to me, they think of him the same way. It's an authoritative figure that it's, you know, I'm the boss, I do this, and I don't want to be told what to do by some commissioner. Mm-hmm. I think that's more than anything, and I'm a little different. I can be strong-willed as well. And I'm going to be strong-willed, especially when it comes to conservative values. Mm-hmm. But if a majority of the citizens are telling me to do something, like I mentioned earlier in some of those other votes, you have no choice. You kind of have to, you know. So hopefully we'll see some changes.
Well, that's funny because, you know, it's also kind of a weird issue that the flock cameras are in Hernando County. That doesn't seem to be a problem with the sheriff. And and you don't have to mention this because I know you're kind of legally bound on some of the, some of the technicalities of this mandate or whatever this was that the sheriff sent over to the Board of County Commissioners, which was, you're not allowed to talk about why flock cameras are there or what they're being used for. Isn't that true?
Well, he did send that initial memo, but it's public knowledge now. So, and I've been open about being against them. I don't like spy cameras on the public when there's no probable cause. So the difference between a body camera is, again, you stopped my freedom. I'm detained. There must be a record. The flock cameras are just simply arbitrarily tracking everyone, which is constitutionally unacceptable.
Those hold up for the law, can they use that?
Well, no, what they don't use it necessarily for the court of law. They're using it to catch people. So they use it to scan for plates, for stolen cars, et cetera. Okay. But if there was a subpoena and they said, hey, we want to know where Jay's going, all they need is a plate number, and then they type it into a system. All the cameras connect. They know where you're at. Yeah, now, supposedly, you got to have a warrant. There's controls. I get that. I'm not saying there's not. Hopefully there is. But I don't think it's necessary.
But there's also the other issue, and you've raised this before, even on the dais, which is that these cameras are, some of the software, some of the hardware involved in these cameras are developed or manufactured in China. And I don't care what they say, they are. There's parts and pieces in these cameras. So how do you know? How do we trust the fact that this country right now, even according to Donald Trump, our president, that this country is not really our friend and that they could be doing a lot of things to be collecting information about us, tracking us, following us? Why do we want to trust things like that?
Oh, yeah. And then the other thing, the bigger issue behind that, right? So I get that, right? So foreign country, et cetera, et cetera. But here's a bigger issue. Why do you want the government to have control over just tracking you? I mean, and I bet you 9 out of 10 people would say they do not trust the government. I mean, you saw some of these polls that are coming out from the federal government and stuff. To me, there's humans involved. They can track you. They say they can't use this information for that reason. All it takes is a rogue person that wants to break the rules. So to me, it's just unacceptable. Technology's gone too far when it's not serving a purpose. I mean, yeah, it's serving a purpose because it's randomly catching people that are breaking the law, but it's kind of like that pre-crime, like the movies we've seen in the past. Yeah. It's different on a body camera. The body camera, again, I have stopped your freedom. Right. We need to protect the cop. We need to protect the citizen, and we're protecting the court system because we're going to know whether they're guilty or innocent right away.
I'm going to remind you of this. Of course, you can always see this in my documentary, Behind the Gate by Tom Lemons. You can go to Amazon and watch that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's Victim Shopping 101. That's my book on Amazon. But on YouTube, you can watch Behind the Gate by Tom Lemons. There's a segment in there, and this is about the body cameras, right? No body cameras in Hernando County. I'm just going on a little tangent. Yeah. I don't care. So the only time they've ever in the history of the Hernando County Sheriff's Office that they've ever used body cameras was to arrest this guy right here. Me. You? Yes. Wow. And they took that footage and passed it on to the media. Now, isn't that interesting? But you can watch my film to get more details about that. What I'm going to do now is move on to another very important topic, because we spent a lot of information, a lot of time on the body cameras, which is very important. I think the majority of the county is ready to go for those. What I've heard. Yeah, right? They are. And I think Steve Champion is also. One question for Steve. He's not going to answer it, but I'm going to ask him anyways. Why do you have 3 of your commissioners who are so vehemently against the majority of your votes?
I couldn't tell you that. I mean, to me, I even yesterday talked to some people that I trust that are in the community, and I asked them, "Am I speaking Greek? Do I make sense?" I mean, to me, it's there's you hear Donald Trump and his administration talking about bringing the country back to common sense. I think that anyone that watches the videos and sees, or hears what I say and the reasons why, the majority would agree with me. Mm-hmm. And the only conclusion I can get is that they're somehow connected, or they they're defending each other. I don't know, because I don't speak to them like that. I have no idea, and that's why I can't really answer it. Yeah, because I'm just as dumbfounded as you are, because common sense is common sense.
Because I know that's what the rest of the county is asking. That's what they're scratching their heads for and saying, why does Steve make sense and the other 3 don't? Aren't they Republicans? That's that question.
There's consequences to that, and that's why there's an election in 26 coming up, and 2 of them are going to be replaced. That's right. And I'll predict right now they're both going to be replaced. Mm-hmm. And if I have anything to say about it, it's going to, because I'm endorsing somebody against them. A real conservative against them.
But I want to get on to the next subject, which is it is on the same subject, but it's kind of a really explosive issue. An explosive development in Hernando County just yesterday, actually on the heels of the last meeting, which was about 6 weeks ago. I can't remember the date, 25th of February, or whatever it was. But we reported it on rnews.news, where I report news, on rnews.news. Just go to that website. And you'll find stories about politics in Hernando County. But the Hawkins issue, let me give a little background on this so that Steve can comment on this a little bit. But there was an issue with a piece of property in Brooksville on Main Street. It was 18 South Main Street, I believe it was. And it was a commercial piece of property that Hawkins sold. He owned it. He sold it to Robert Buckner, the Buckner Real Estate, or Buckner's, I forgot the name of the company, but Buckner is the county's real estate broker, and it essentially, maybe not formally, but he is. And so this property was sold to Buckner. There's a lot of backstory. So what I'm going to do, before I go into let me go into the weeds in this. Go ahead and just watch this video real quick. It's some excerpts from the last meeting with this past Tuesday, which shows some of the back and forth between Commissioner Steve Champion and Chairman Hawkins and some of the other, and actually Attorney John Jobin, who was trying to fill in the blanks with some legalities. And essentially, so I'm not going to go into the whole thing because it's long, and you just have to watch this video. So let's go to that right now.
And when you read the statute, it says if there's any perception of, something inappropriate or unethical, that you should recuse yourself. So you're not recusing yourself in this item?
So I think what's important is Mr. Jobin needs to answer that question.
And if this comes up, and Mr. Jobin can answer in a second, if this comes up and you stay, I'm gonna be asking questions of you, kind of as a witness.
Again, Mr. Jobin, am I able to recuse myself?
You can, not you must, you can recuse yourself if you think it would objectively look to a straw person that there was a potential ethics issue or conflict.
At this point, there's just no way I'm voting for this. Not a chance. I believe there is a conflict. I believe the personal relationship you've had with the Buckner family and stuff creates a conflict. I believe the fact that that you spoke to the attorney about leasing the building prior to selling it, and the fact that Buckner is our broker for the county. I think all of that on the surface looks really, really bad.
Yes, I'd just like to state for the record that based on the prior discussion earlier, the chairman has recused himself from this voting matter, which is why he's absented himself from the room.
Okay, so now that you've seen that video, do you not see the conflict that's going on? And basically, what we're looking at here is that Chairman Hawkins had sold a piece of property to Buckner, and what the appearance is, and there's a major conflict that it appears, even, and we'll get into the statutes, is that he made a profit on it. He'll say he didn't. This property was sold for $875,000, I believe, to Buckner. Buckner turned around and attempted to lease it back to the county at almost $1 million over an incremented number of years, right? A total cost of about $1 million. And so this property, which is funny because some of the conflict that they say is involved in is that the Hawkins is friends with the family, goes hunting trips with the Buckner family. Here's the big caveat. There was a verbal agreement between another lessee. How do you say that word? Lessee, right? So that's a weird word, but I'm always learning. I don't care. So anyway, so between the lessee, right, a previous lessee who was going to rent it, who was going to lease it for more than half. Was it 40% less? About 40% less. Let's let Steve get all the details, because I'm just kind of recapping from what I watched. So Steve, go ahead and tell us the details.
I'm going to try to give you the brief synopsis. So you're going to put some videos up from the meeting, and I'm just going to talk to you about facts. So 4 weeks ago, when this was brought up and I was looking over the agenda, I saw this property out there, and it's no, we know it's a small town. Everybody knows who owns that building. I knew who owned it. It was 18 Main Street. It was owned by Commissioner Hawkins for about a year and a half. So everybody knew that, and actually friends of mine were going to lease it, and for a year and a half they were doing remodel on the building, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm well aware of the history of the building and what the plan was for it. And but more concerning is when it came on the agenda, because he has a right to do what he wants with his property. He bought it, he sold it, fine, no problem there. The problem I had initially was, number one, increasing the size of government, don't like it. Number two, taxpayers getting ripped off, because I knew exactly what it was going to be leased for. So it was going to be leased in the 40s, and the lease started off at 81 and escalated to 106 per year, right? So to me, it's like, well, if we're going to lease it,
And Hawkins knew this.
he knew that. Obviously, he was going to lease it to the rich people. It's a commercial. They're going to use it for space for the county. Okay. But anyway, so
Internet technology for the county was going to lease it.
So basically, there's the issue of it didn't look good, and that's what I said in the meeting. I said it just doesn't look good. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, by the way. Zero.
There's no facts yet.
I just all I know is what I know, and it didn't look good. And perception when it comes to our job is very important to have a positive perception, as positive as you can be, and transparent as you can be, because you don't want the public thinking you're doing something that's not appropriate.
So these people know each other, is what you're trying to say.
I believe they do. I think Mr. Lemons said that. I mean, in the meeting, you'll see the clips from the video.
So they have a connection.
Well, it went a step further. They actually met, when it gets to that point, I'm sure that Lemons will put it on there, Tom Lemons will put it on there, but the Buckner actually says that everybody knew about the lease prior to even the sale. So that made it even worse.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is here, number one, we don't want the government expanding. We don't want to pay more than what the private sector would pay. At least I don't want to pay more. And on the third issue is you're taking prime real estate off the main road in downtown Brooksville, which we're in turn trying to help Main Street out to be able to bring people down. And if you clog it with government, you're not going to have any
That
economic
makes a lot of
development.
sense.
Yes.
So there's a few things to consider there, and that's why I went on the tour around the county to find space, and I found several locations, including the one they're in, that if we just did a better job building it out, it would be sufficient.
Well, Steve, you have really got to tell the story because I think this is incredible. And it's in the video, too. When you watch it's 16, 17 minutes long. You're going to just be blown away by this. But, Steve, you got to tell the part about where you went for a tour inside the IT department. And you said they tried to bamboozle you.
Yeah. Those words came from an eternal employee that didn't want to be named. I know their name, but didn't want to be named unless they had to be, unless there was a subpoena or something like that, which I said right in the meeting, I'm not talking about hearsay. I know who told me. And they can testify if it was necessary. So what I was trying to say is these are the facts, right? So the facts were you were going to lease it to somebody else at a lower price. Facts are you knew the other, the agency like you talked about, and then we don't want to span government. And on top of it, when I did the tours around there, this employee called me and said they bamboozled you. I said, well, you don't know me that well because I don't get bamboozled. I need to. I want to see it. You show me. So anyway, her words were basically, as a quick recap, is that they brought in every single employee they could bring in. They brought in extra equipment. They wanted it to look messy. They wanted it to look full. So I would agree with them on a space. But what it did is when I walked in the door, I go, well, it's not very organized here, is it? So I put on my.
There could be some repairs done here.
So I put on my logistics hat because I spent over a quarter century working for a major corporation, and a lot of my job is logistics. So I said, well, if you add some cubicles here, you add some shelving here, this 3,500 square foot space could easily be usable for IT, and it happens to be in the courthouse that we already own. So
There you go.
basically, the employee was saying, and I've had several come to me about things, is we've been asking for feedback around government efficiency. And basically, this employee told me that this stuff was going on, and I spoke to Doug Horvat, and I also brought it up in a meeting, which you can play the clip.
But all right, we're going to get back to the end of this show because we're ending this show now, and I want to again thank Steve Champion. Thank you, Steve. You're gonna come back, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Thank you, because we need to hear more about what's going on in Hernando County. And I also, once again, want to thank our sponsor, Tri-Peak Roofing, your Hernando County roofer. Come on now. The number's right there on the bottom of the screen. Give them a call if you need a roof. And that's it for us today.
Just like us on Facebook.
Like us on listen, we have a lot of Facebook pages. Just find us. Get real with Tom Lemons and the rest of my crew. And we'll see you next week on Get Real.